In today's news, the government has extended the midnight curfew until July 30th and $4 million assigned to the East End Sewage Project.
CDC extends no sail order for cruise ships until September 30th. All this and so much more when 284 News returns.
There's a reason you get up on a morning. A reason you pick yourself up, start the day. Maybe it's sheer grit. Maybe it's your ethics. Maybe it's because you know people like you are waiting for people just like you. We all have our reasons, and for Republic Bank, that reason is you. Every little thing, every big thing. It's all about making a difference in your life. Because after 182 years, if it's one thing we're sure about, is that the difference is you. We're here to help.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Welcome, viewers. Today is Friday, July 17th, 2020. I am Kyla Kenesha Forbes.
And my name is Javon Wilson, thanking you once again for tuning in to another great edition of 284 News. Now, today we have quite a mouthful to share with you guys, beginning with some shocking news that was revealed last night. Now, viewers, we've been going around the conversation regarding the qualifying criteria for the Social Security Board's unemployment relief. And it seems now that new information has surfaced. Just last night, Dr. the Honorable Natalia Whitley made some new revelations. Let's watch.
Persons felt that Social Security could not give unemployment relief if they weren't up to date with their Social Security and NHI. We asked Social Security Board directly, and they said that that is not true. Even persons who are not up to date with their Social Security and their NHI would be able to get an unemployment benefit.
Yes, viewers, that was Dr. the Honorable Natalia Whitley, and I think this is really shocking news considering that just recently the Labor Minister, that is Honorable Vincent Whitley, he would have said that over 800 persons, and that is at least a week or two ago, so I'm sure that number has probably risen since he released that information. But he also said, quote, the disqualifications are claimants that are not being in insurable employment for at least 1 year and claimants not having to work for 13 out of 20 contribution weeks immediately before March 30th. End of quote. So now we see the Labor Minister is saying it is because they were not up to date, and now the Minister, Natalia Whitley, last night saying even those who were not up to date will qualify. Well, viewers, we've been trying to reach out to the Social Security Board for some level of clarification for a very long time, but somehow they seem very reluctant to have this discussion with us. And it's very disappointing, Kyla, especially since we are here trying to address the pressing needs of the population.
Javon, as you said, I think a lot of things are being said. Some of them are opposing to the next. We see where the Labor Minister, where this would actually fall under, is saying one thing. But then, as you said, Honorable Natalia Whitley just last night basically saying that persons did not need to be up to date to claim for these unemployment benefits. Unfortunately, we do not know which one of these are true, and more so, unfortunately, the deadline just passed yesterday.
Right.
So even if this was not the case and this persons were able to claim, maybe this is too late for persons now to even catch up with this. So.
And it's a real shame because, again, like we've said multiple times on this newscast, the people who continue to suffer from this catastrophe, the majority of those people, we should say, are the employees, are the persons who work within especially the hospitality industry that has been closed shut ever since this pandemic began. But viewers, we will continue to press for those answers because that's why we're here as parts of the media. It's our responsibility to have your concerns addressed. We're going to head straight into our newscast for today, the British Virgin Islands will operate under the current midnight curfew order for an additional 2 weeks. Now, this was confirmed just yesterday by the governor's office and was signed off on by Deputy Governor Mr. David Archer. The public is reminded that under the order number 24, the curfew continues from midnight to 5 a.m. daily, subject to such conditions as stipulated in this order. Private vessels are allowed to continue using territorial waters during full daylight hours, and that, of course, is between the hours of 5:01 a.m. and 7 p.m., and ferries between the hours of 5 a.m. and 11:59 at night. Now, residents are also able to access beaches from 5:01 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. daily. Now, Kyla, I know this decision, again, was met with some level of contention. There are many residents who support the move to extend the curfew, but equally persons are frustrated and are of the opinion that the government should allow us to operate fully in light of our COVID-free status. Now, we did also post a poll to our Facebook page earlier today, and up to press time, majority of the voters seem to be in favor of the curfew extension, as you can see on the screen. One resident said in support, "I'm sure a large portion of BVI residents are sleeping better at night because of the curfew. No clubs at night because of the curfew. No bars, restaurants, or parties in residential areas. Breaking the BVI noise control laws that police and politicians refuse to enforce. It may be the biggest driving force behind this survey's results." But on the contrary, viewers, another resident saying, quote, "I don't want to sound ignorant like Trump, but the simple fact is we need to practice social distancing and try our very best to move on. We have to open our borders. We have to feed our families. We have to educate our children. These things are simply essential. We can't just pretend that if we wait long enough, this thing is simply going to go away and life will return to what it was before. Fear is something that we must mitigate, manage, and live with because we may not be able to avoid it forever." End of quote. Now, viewers, the BVI Health Services Authority has tested 622 individuals, with 614 returning negative and 8 positive results today. Currently, there are no active cases. Now, Kyla, we see the curfew being extended again. Clearly some contention as persons are caught on both sides of the fence. But as we continue to see the government chart the way forward, I think the one common thing we're seeing is the fact that we cannot please everyone, but equally a majority of the population are frustrated and really speaking out as, you know, we still have no clear dates for reopening, and like we said, many industries are crumbling.
I think, Javon, that here in the BVI, we are so blessed, just extremely blessed. The curfew conditions that we are under, much places are, it's even stricter in some Caribbean countries, in countries around the world. So I think we are very blessed. I think where persons issue or frustration may stem from is that you're not hearing much. You're simply hearing about an extension, but you're not hearing why. Why is this extension? How does it associate with the coronavirus and the BVI where we are at? As you said, borders reopening, we have yet to hear about that. We are yet to hear about our education system. So we're seeing extensions coming out of cabinet, decisions coming out of cabinet, but no one is standing up and speaking to the people and saying, hey, this is the way forward. This is where we're going, and these are some of the decisions that we will just have to deal with for right now.
Right, and that clarity is so important. I think it will alleviate a lot of the concerns that we've listed, and people will be more at ease because then you know there's a timeline attached to it, and then you kind of know how to position yourself mentally, but not knowing is driving a lot of fear. So we have to do a little bit better as it relates to the communication aspect of things.
I do agree. Now, as we move on, the government of the Virgin Islands will be providing assistance to persons who have lost their jobs due to the COVID-19 pandemic and are desirous of returning to their home country. Minister of Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration, Honorable Vincent Whitley, in a statement at the 12th sitting of the second session of the 4th House of Assembly, said the Departments of Immigration and Labor and Workforce Development have been faced with an escalation in the number of persons who have been laid off or released from their place of employment because of the COVID-19 pandemic over the past 3 months. Honorable Wheatley said he addressed the matter in a previous statement that persons residing in the BVI who had been terminated and were interested in seeking alternative employment had the option of applying to the acting chief immigration officer for the option to receive a conditional permit under the Immigration and Passport Amendment Act 2016. This process, he said, allowed a qualifying persons residing for a period of 5 years or more and not having a previous conditional permit within the last 3 years to remain in the BVI while seeking employment for a period of 3 months. Honorable Wheatley said the government is, however, mindful that not all employees who have been terminated will qualify for the conditional permit, but persons were still invited to submit an application to the chief immigration officer. Now, the minister added that the reality is that some persons will not be able to find alternative jobs and without financial or family support will be required to leave the territory. Honorable Wheatley said, and I quote, "With a reducing job market and the government's commitment under the Labor Code 2010, Section 2B, which states, and I quote, the legitimate employment interests of Virgin Islanders and belongers shall be paramount," end quote. We therefore ask that persons falling within this category of being released from permanent employment, being unable to find alternative work and unable to obtain a conditional permit, begin to make the necessary arrangements to return to their homeland or an approved receiving jurisdiction of their choosing. Now, meanwhile, the acting chief immigration officer, Mr. Ian Penn, is inviting persons who are interested in repatriating to their home country to contact the Department of Immigration to receive assistance to do so. Mr. Penn said persons should submit the necessary documentations, which would include the bibliography page of their passports, the number of persons they will be traveling with, and the country of destination in an email to foster a more efficient process. Mr. Penn said, and I quote, persons should register with the Immigration Department by emailing immigrationinfo@gov.vg, stating the particulars of their departure to allow for their exit to be properly recorded, thus assisting in a smooth re-entry when the opportunity presents itself.
A really tough pill to swallow, but I really think a sign of the times that we're living in. The reality is, like we've constantly reiterated here, the hospitality industry employs a vast majority of the expatriate community. Without a tourism industry, there are no jobs, bills are mounting.
Yeah.
The reality is a lot of people wanted to leave, so now they will be given that opportunity. But also for the persons who are now forced to leave, we're hearing persons saying, leave and then do what? For many persons, they've been living here for majority of their lives. I even heard some persons recommending that the Social Security Board pay out what they would have paid in, as in whatever the leaving expatriates would have paid into the system, being that we're living in a pandemic and this is a crisis everywhere, allow those persons to be able to secure those monies before leaving so that they can go back to some level of livelihood as they return to their respective countries. But it's a frightening reality, and to think about what will happen even to the tourism industry after a big portion leaves, you know, it's really, I know this is a fluid situation and we're trying to figure out what's the next step, but nevertheless, it's really difficult to think about.
Javon, as you said, it's very difficult to think about, but as we've been speaking about, the extension of the period in which persons were able to return back to to work after temporary termination. It was first 3 months, then it was extended to about 7 months. And these are some of the repercussions coming out of this. We're seeing now where, you know, at first in the House, we did see the minister basically speaking towards, hey, you can go and seek alternative employment if needed. But of course, with a reduced job market, as stated before, where a person's going to find work. So now persons are faced with leaving. Thankfully, they will get some sort of assistance to leave. But as you said, going back to what? So it's definitely a bleak reality for much persons.
Definitely. Viewers, we have a lot more news coming your way after the commercial break. The marketplace vendors are relocating, and as well as $4 million injected to the East End sewage project. All that and so much more when we return.
In the final analysis, we have two options: stay inside and create memories that will last forever, or go outside and say goodbye to those memories. We're not stuck inside, we're safer inside. The time is now to unite, embrace, and love each other from a distance. Show the world and the people in it just how much they mean to you by keeping your distance. It may be difficult, but necessary. Let's reintroduce humanity and heart to all homes. While we can't enjoy the sun, sand, and sea, let's take this time to remember why we are nature's little secrets. Stay inside, and when it's over, we would all be better, stronger, and we would all still be together. With self-discipline and patience, we can overcome. We are, have been, and will always be VI Strong. A message from your team at 284 Media.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now we're heading to the eastern side of the island. Good news, the long-standing East End sewage issue is set to be addressed in short order with the appropriation of $4 million in funds. Now, this was confirmed by the district representative, Minister Natalia Whitley, within a detailed address to the 7th district. That was last night. Let's listen in.
I have to tell you as well, when it comes to jobs, the Minister of Transportation, Utilities and Works will say a little bit more about this. We are going to restart the sewage program here in the 7th district and the 8th district. I have to say to you, for many, many years, persons have been speaking about this sewage project. And unfortunately, I think it had to be around 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. Somewhere in that area, $8 million was taken from the project, the sewage project, to go into the Pear Park. And I have to tell you, even today, we have sewage water running on the streets of the 7th district and the 8th district. And I have to tell you, it is something that I don't like. It is something that we have to correct. I'm grateful for the Minister of Finance. I'm grateful to the Minister of Transportation, Works and Utilities for securing $4 million to go towards that project. $4 million to get the sewage water off the streets that our children have to be walking across in little puddles. $4 million that I have to say to you people of the 7th district that will allow persons in this community to get jobs. Because we believe, as an administration, we believe as leaders in this territory that the economic opportunities here in the district should create jobs for the people in this community.
Now, viewers, in an invited comment today, Premier Foy said, quote, during the last administration, $8 million was allocated to fix the East End Long Look sewage problem. However, those funds were illegally transferred to the Cruisewear project to complete that project. The funds were never returned to the East End Long Look project, thereby leaving the people of the East End end of Tortola to further suffer. Now, this government has this project as high priority. Through such efforts, we now see the BVI Port Authority grant, which is $3 million to the project, and TRC's grant of $1 million of the $2 million grant to the Eastern Long Look Sewage Project. This gives us a grand total of $4 million towards the project, which will resume within 2 months, he said. Now, residents have long complained about the chronic sewage issue that spans across the territory. We have that issue in Road Town, in King Garden Bay, but very specifically in Easton. The project has been politically terminated, as we know, over the years, several times through successive governments. Now, before entering into public office, CEO of the Caribbean Basin Enterprises Limited, Mr. Carvin Malone, secured the contract for the East End Long Look project under the VIP administration, but that contract was then terminated by NDP once they came into office in 2006. NDP contracted Global Water for the treatment of the sewerage water on September 17th of 2006. However, when the VIP regained governance, the contract was not executed. Instead, Bywater was contracted and eventually built the sewage treatment plant that is now located in Paraquita Bay. Now, viewers, under the newly proposed project, a pumping station will be constructed in Long Swamp, and sewage lines will be installed connecting homes to the main line, which will then transport the sewage to the treatment plant in Paraquita Bay. Now, long-awaited project, I think for way too long. Residents across the territory, and we're going to speak to very specifically the eastern side of the island, have been forced to live in unhealthy, deplorable conditions. You know, our children are walking the streets and having to jump over these puddles. And so government in, government out, we've heard the talks. Like we mentioned in the story, through successive governments, though, the work seemingly always came to a halt once another government came into power. But hopefully this time around, we see $4 million being injected, and we have to trust and hope that not only will works begin as, you know, the government is saying, but we'd like to hope that they can complete it as well.
Most definitely. With $8 million first being budgeted for this project, for it now to be $4 million, I would really like to see what those numbers and the output would look like. How much are we getting for this this value?
Right.
But trust me, if this government, if the FOI-led government is able to really and truly execute this sewage project in the eastern end of the island, trust me, this government will be heroes to the people of East End, because trust me,
this is over 20-something years long.
Persons in East End definitely feels neglected as it pertains to the sewage project, but also roads, deplorable roads, and the conditions in that district. So we're definitely hoping, just how we rally behind our sister islands getting that help and that necessary attention, really hoping, and I'm definitely cheering on, that the people in East End and the eastern end of the island will get that much needed attention. Now, as we scurry on to our next story, vendors plying their trade at the market square in Road Town, we all see them, we all get our fresh fruits from them, will be temporarily relocating on Fishlock Road, adjacent the Virgin Islands Fire and Rescue Headquarters, until works to renovate the current market square is completed. Minister for Transportation, Works and Utilities, Honorable Kai Reimer, and officials from his ministry met with the vendors on July 10th in a follow-up meeting and provided an update on the preparations made for the accommodations as the government of the Virgin Islands develop the market square area. The vendors were also shown their potential staging area. Now, Honorable Reimer said, and I quote, "Vendors were given an opportunity to share concerns and suggestions as plans were brought forward to modernize the Road Town Market Square. The design for the temporary location was also presented to those vendors who were in attendance. Premier and Minister of Finance, Honorable Andrew Afoy, in his 2020 budget address, had made mention that the designs were in progress for the development of the market square. He said, and I quote, "This will add an aesthetics to the city and provide more business opportunities for entrepreneurs, especially those in the farming community." The development of the market square is expected to be another historic change for Road Town, our little city with a big heart, by the government of the Virgin Islands in transformation for resilience and sustainability, smart strategies, empowered people, and green development plan.
Good stuff. I know recently we saw the Minister of Finance as well as the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries injecting about $2 million into the agricultural industry. And if we're to be very frank, like, you cannot really revitalize the industry without having a centered location to sell fresh fruits and produce. So good job for the government. Viewers, we have a lot of news right ahead. We're going to go for a quick commercial break, but when we come back, lots more coming your way. Stick with us.
I love you, Penny. Run, Forrest, run! Fire! Move out. Man, I'm sick of being in this house. I just want to go to the beach for all go just one day and gather to the garden. I'm sick of being in this house.
Having withdrawals from being stuck in the house for so long? Are you tired of looking at your old photos and daydreaming about your next vacation? Well, BVI Staycation is back, and there's so much to choose from. For more information on upcoming deals, follow us on Facebook at BVI Staycation. Get ready, BVI, for an adventure in paradise. It's time to vacation where we live.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, as we begin to wrap up, the government of the Virgin Islands finally being able to embrace renewable energy. Now, with an objective to mitigate the effects on climate change, reduce our territory's dependence on fossil fuels, and of course overall energy security, the BVI Electricity Corporation continues to explore alternative energy sources for the British Virgin Islands. Today, viewers, we are one step closer. Our reporter Ron Grant was on the scene to capture the details. Let's watch.
As the territory of the Virgin Islands continues to make strides towards renewable energy, the BVI Electricity Corporation today, July 17th, presented an update on the Anegada Hybrid Renewable Energy and Battery Energy Storage Project. Now, at the press conference, we saw speakers including the Honorable Sherry DeCastro, Junior Minister for Tourism, as well as Mrs. Rosemary Flax, the Chairman of the BVI Electricity Corporation, and of course, Mr. Leroy Abraham, the General Manager of the BVI Electricity Corporation. Now, this has been a long time coming, but what exactly does this mean for residents of Anegada, and what are the pros and cons of the hybrid renewable energy and battery energy storage system? We were there present at the press conference, and we have all the details. Stick around. Anegada, you're going green. Anegada, you're going green. These were the enthusiastic words echoed by Chairman of the BVI Electricity Corporation Board, Mrs. Rosemary Flax, during a press conference held today to update the territory on the Anegada Hybrid Renewable Energy and Battery Energy Storage Project System. In her remarks, Chairman Flax spoke about the long road which led to this very proud moment for the BVI Electricity Corporation and the residents of Anegada.
There is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. And I can assure you, as chairman of BVI EC, this is the season of energy transformation for the BVI. As I said earlier, and I echo the sentiments of James Baldwin. If you know whence you came, there are absolutely no limitations to where you can go. BVI EC is going places. Anegada, you are going green. How good is that? Anegada, You are going green.
It was also announced that Power 54, a company owned by world-renowned former NFL player Mr. Ray Lewis, has been selected and contracted to lead this project. Though local companies did show interest, General Manager Mr. Leroy Abraham said this project was out of local expertise. While not being able to give an exact time when works will begin due to the present pandemic, that is COVID-19, Mr. Abraham did state that a part of the contract is to utilize as much local products and staff as possible. He also took the time to thank his team at the BVI Electricity Corporation for their hard work in seeing the project to this point.
In closing, I would certainly like to thank all of you, particularly taking time out on your Friday morning being here. This is excellent news, as I said when we visited Anegada, those of you who were there at the site visit. This is excellent news. The BVI Electricity Corporation and the Government of the Virgin Islands is certainly making very rapid progress with regards to the transformation of the energy landscape for the territory.
Junior Minister of Tourism and at-large representative, the Honorable Shari De Castro, spoke about the myriad of opportunities this project opens up for Anegada, as well as setting the pace for the wider BVI, including job opportunities and so much more.
To see that renewable energy is moving forward on the island of Anegada, one of the special gems of the Virgin Islands. Green energy allows us to lower costs and increase productivity, all while creating new industries and new jobs and reducing pollution. When this initiative gets underway, it will spur job and career opportunities for our people who choose to train, to equip themselves, and to develop and strengthen their competencies as the platform for technology and knowledge transfer takes place. We must keep pushing ourselves. This government has already said that all new public infrastructure projects will embrace smart technology to increase energy efficiency, lower operating costs, and reduce the carbon footprint. We are indeed moving in that direction.
Reporting for 284 News, I'm Ron Grant.
And the Anegada Renewable project is finally coming into fruition, and of course we couldn't be any happier. This brings us, viewers, to the end of today's newscast. Be sure to join us for daily news updates at 284media.com, and you can join us again on Monday. We are also on Facebook at 284media and 284BVI on Instagram, as well as Twitter. My name is Javon Wilson.
And I am Kyla Kenesha Forbes. Always a pleasure, viewers. We'll see you again next week as we deliver your daily dose of local, regional, and international content. 284 News, your source for honest and impartial news, right here on 284 Media. Have a happy Friday and an amazing weekend, everybody.